Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to recap Iyanla Fix My Life Season 4, Episode 14, Family of Lies, Part 1. So the show is about a mother and her 6 daughters, and it appears that the only thing they have in common is the DNA that they share. Iyanla moves the daughters of Alicia, who is 50 years old, into one of her houses of healing. And the girls are oldest to youngest. Shay, who's 35, and she said that growing up with her mom was hell because of her addiction to drugs and that she felt like she was robbed of her childhood. And then we have Keisha, who is 31, and she said that she lost her dad and reached out to Iyanla to help fix the dysfunction in her family. And then we have Precious, who is 29, and she holds a grudge against their mother because when she was 7 months old, the mother put her up for adoption and that she never was told that she was loved by their mother. And then we have Bianca, who is 27, and she was raised by the grandmother, and she has 4 kids, and Precious has 7 kids of her own. And then we have Marcia, who considers Keisha her mom, the oldest sister, and says that she has no relationship with Alicia, who's actually their mom. And then we have Markel, who's 25 and the youngest, and she's been to prison multiple times for armed robbery, and she is the closest to the mother. We learned that this is the first time that the girls have all been together in 19 years. I'm thinking, oh my Lord. So Keisha is the peacekeeper and the one who called Iyanla, and she has her there to fix her family and find out why her siblings hold on to the anger that they have against the mother, and she thinks that the root is their mother being on drugs and failing to accept her, accept the consequences of her actions. And Iyanla doesn't think it is a family to fix, but a group of people who share the same DNA, and that if it doesn't work out for Keisha, she says that she'll be devastated because they are all that she have. And Iyanla points out to her that siblings are just people she shared a room with, and that she's never really had a relationship to miss. And I kind of disagree with that because I have 2 siblings that I did not grow up with, but I still feel a kindred with them. I think about them. And even though we don't see each other that often, I can remember, going to visit my grandmother as a little girl, and my brother lived in the house next door with my uncle. And the first thing I would do when I jumped out the car was run over there and knock on his bedroom window to see if he was home. And I love my brother and I love my sister to death, even though we didn't grow up together, and we, years apart and years between the times that we see each other. So I feel that it's more than DNA, but it does require an effort to maintain those relationships. Iyanla goes on to tell Keisha that the reason she chose them for the show is because they were all Black women, and that Black women are the anchor, and so she wants to do whatever she can to help Black women be stronger and better. Remember, Precious has 7 children, and she says that she lives her life trying to prove that she could be a better mother than her mother. And she has a lot of resentment because she was adopted out and not raised by a family member like Bianca, who was raised by the grandmother when Alicia no longer wanted her. So Shay says that the sisters often wondered who would continue the family chain because the grandma had 6 kids and then their mom had 6 kids. And so she guessed that Precious won the battle because she has 7 kids, and Iyanla lets them know that that may not be a chain to keep going, and that it may be best to break the chain and stop having kids that you can't emotionally and physically be there for. The sisters disagree, but Iyanla lets them know that there is more to being a parent than taking care of your children, and that you first have to be able to take care of yourself and give your children more than the crumbs that are left over if you aren't, mentally capable of parenting. And she feels that because of the unresolved issues between Precious and Alicia, that there's no way that she could be like this great mother to her own kids. So So when Markel interjects to answer a question, Iyanla lets her know that as the youngest in the group, she should be the last to speak unless one of the older sisters yields the floor to her. And I was like, dang, Iyanla, how you do a little girl like that? So I thought it was harsh. And then she adds that Shay, being the oldest, is the elder and therefore the leader. So they have learned their dysfunction and their anger and the way that they treat their mother from the way that Shay treats her. And so it's up to the older ones to bring along the ones behind them. So, she lets them know that Bianca, is responsible for Markel, and then Marcia is responsible for Bianca and Markel, and then Precious is responsible for the three of them. And then it goes all the way up the ladder to Shay, who would then be responsible for all the girls and how they turn out. So after Iyanla shares that her older sister died, Precious says that she lives thousands of miles away and would just like to be able to pick up the phone and call and talk to one of her sisters. And Iyanla points out that would require having a relationship with her sisters, which she does not, and that, they need to have memories that they've shared and stories, from their childhood that they shared to have built that relationship on, and that none of them have that. They just have the fact that they share DNA and that they have the same mother. So Iyanla goes over to Shay and asks her, what she wants from all of this, and she says that she is seeking nothing from her mom, that she is there seeking relationships from her sisters. And Iyanla lets her know that isn't going to work well for her because she needs her, to be the mature one to help bring these sisters along. And so Shay says that she gave up on their mom years ago and realized that there was no help for her. So then Precious breaks down and Iyanla calls her over and lets Shay sit in her lap, and then she holds her like she's a little girl. Sort of like how she did Shelby in the Nephi and Solo episode where she was holding him like he was a baby. And so Precious is hungry for her mother's love, and as she mothers Precious, Iyanla, talks to Shay and asks her, how does it make her feel to see Precious in such a vulnerable state. Then Precious says that when she calls to actually talk to her mom, that it always ends up being a hollering session. And Iyanla asks if it is the 29-year-old calling to speak to Alicia or if it's the 7-month-old baby calling, the baby that was adopted out. And Precious admits that it's the 7-month-old that's calling. So we learned that their mother wasn't raised by her mother and was separated from her siblings, and her mother wasn't raised by her mother. So this is like a generational curse that has been going on and on. And so now this generation of girls, even though they are, suffering from the actions of their mother, their grandmother, and their great-grandmother, at least they want to break the chain, and they're, willing to be there and try to right the wrongs of their past so that they can move forward and be better mothers, better sisters, and better aunts to their kids. Iyanla takes the girls outside for an exercise, so they stand in front of this long red line that she has on the ground. And then she tells them that she's going to call out a list of traits because she's trying to figure out, if they have a lot in common with each other, even though they didn't grow up together. So if she calls out a trait, then if it applies to you, you jump forward and then, or either jump backwards. So they were jumping forward and backwards as she was answering the questions. So the first thing she started with was, do they prefer summer over winter? And all of the girls jumped forward and said that they prefer the summer months instead of the winter months. So then she asked them how many of them have had a hair weave, and 4 of them jumped back and said that they've had a weave before. And then she asked them how many of them were virgins. And so one of the sisters jumped forward, and so they were like, you ain't no virgin. So then they get into this little, joking back and forth. And then she says, well, do you mean sleeping with a man? So through this conversation, we learned that I think it's the second to the oldest sister may be a lesbian. Next, she asked them how many of them have stopped talking to one of their sisters. And then 2 of them jumped forward and said that they have had a moment where they got mad and stopped talking to a sister. And then she asked, have they ever cursed a mother? And one of the sisters, jumped forward and says that she has cursed at their mother before. And then she asked, ever felt abandoned? 4 of them said they felt abandoned. And then 4 said that there have been times when they felt like they were alone in the world. So it turns out that they have a lot in common and seem to enjoy each other's company, but Iyanla feels that that's about to change when Miss Alicia arrives at the house. So when Alicia gets there, Iyanla takes her out back to talk to her, and she says that she doesn't know what to expect because there are so many personalities and clashes amongst the girls, and then they clash with her. So we see right off the bat that Miss Alicia ain't trying to take no kind of responsibility for this mess she's created. And so when Iyanla sits down to talk with her, she is already in defense mode. And when Iyanla says a couple of the girls are angry with her, she says that they will get over it. Then Iyanla asks her how she has 6 daughters, but they don't have a relationship. And Alicia says raising her kids was not her priority, that she was too busy drinking, drugging, and partying to be worried about these girls. And Iyanla asks her, has she ever said that to the girls? And she says that no, she hasn't. So in terms of Precious, she says that she already had 2 kids by the time she got pregnant with her, and she didn't want the responsibility of having to take care of another child. And she admits that she told Precious that she didn't want to be bothered with her. I'm thinking, like, you already put the child up for adoption, and then you go tell her that you just didn't want to be bothered, like she was a baby doll that you were tossing to the side. So Miss Alicia got some issues that she need to get to the bottom of. And then Iyanla points out that when she talks to her daughters, they are not the age that they are today. So when she's talking to Shay, she's not talking to a 35-year-old. She's talking to whatever age that Shay was when the relationship was broken. And Iyanla says it's a lot on her shows because remember, you know, back to the Nephi and Solo episode where, you know, he was molested as a child, and then he became a father when he was like 12 years old. And so all of his pain and his everything just stopped at that moment. And then I think with Nephi, she was molested when she was a little girl, and so her life pretty much stopped there, and Nefertiria got buried at that moment, and then Nephi took over and continued on. So it seems like Alicia has done the same thing to her kids, where wherever their relationship breakdown took place, that's where they're stuck at, and this is the reason why they can't grow up and move forward. Then Alicia says that she doesn't have a good relationship with the family she gave Precious because she was molested by the husband. And I'm like, and I never did figure out if these people were like her relatives, or if they were just people that she knew. But regardless, how do you let somebody who molested you as a child turn around and adopt your girl baby? Because like I would be thinking that they were going to molest that person too. But then she says that they have a really good relationship, that Precious really loves these people, and she had a great life. And I'm just going to be interested to know if it's going to come out in part 2 that this man also molested Precious at some point in time in her life. So Alicia says that she has moved past all what has happened to her because she can't go through life bitter and angry, and she wants the girls to have relationships with each other because she never had that with her siblings. So Iyanla lets her know that she is going to stand with her no matter what, and she wants to support Alicia in learning to forgive herself. So Alicia grew up in chaos and confusion and pain, and she has passed that dysfunction on to her daughters. And Iyanla brings her into the house and says that she can feel the tension as soon as Alicia entered the room. And then Markel, you know, she's being obedient because, you know, Iyanla told her that she was the youngest, so she should be the last one to speak. So as Alicia is hugging and greeting the other daughters, you can hear Markel in the back saying, okay, I can't hug you yet. I got to go last. I need to know my place. So I thought that was kind of cute. So then when Alicia hugs Precious, she tells her that she could have come to her and talked to her about whatever she was going through. And Iyanla cuts in and tells her that no, she couldn't, because if she didn't know she could, there was no way that she was ever going to come and talk to her. So obviously there's a breakdown in communication that Precious didn't know that Alicia was so open to hearing whatever it was that she was feeling. When Shay hugs her mom, Marcia jokes about the way she's hugging her, and this lit a fuse in Shay, and she goes off on Marcia and tells her to mind her own business, and then she calls her a bitch not one time, not two times, but I think she called her that 3 times. So Iyanla has to pull Alicia into another room to try and calm things down. And outside, the sisters are going at each other and taking sides. And so Iyanla says that she can't believe that the dynamic of the whole group changed within 10 minutes of Alicia arriving. So Iyanla brings everyone together to point out there is more going on beneath the surface than they are alluding to. And so she addresses Marcia and asks her how does she feel about Shay. And Marcia says that she didn't make the comment trying to be mean-spirited, but everything she does and says seems to set Shay off. And she says that since Shay took it upon herself to call her out of her name, that she doesn't have anything else to say to her, because one thing she's not going to tolerate is being disrespected. And she adds that Shay is just a very mean person and that she's always been mean. So Shay says that she didn't know that the way she acts affects her sisters, but she doesn't apologize for the way she reacted when Marcia made the comment. So Iyanla tells Shay that she can get mad and recover, but for them, every hurt is fatal. So they don't see things as, oh, she was just joking or she didn't mean it. Like, they just take everything to heart and they hold grudges, and, you know, of course, that's killing them on the inside. And so until they're able to break that chain, you know, they're not going to be able to move forward. So Iyanla asks Alicia if she can feel the pain in the room, because although Shay is the oldest, she takes her cues from her mother. And Alicia was just sitting there as all this bickering was going back and forth, and she wasn't saying anything. She was just sitting there like she was an observer to all this chaos that's going on in somebody else's life, like she's not a part of it and she doesn't have, you know, any control over what's going on. So she says that she is trying to understand why they always go off on each other, and they all say that they get it from her because that is what she does to them. And then Iyanla says that in this moment she is revoking Alicia's authority as a mother, and that she's going to give it back to her later, but right now she doesn't have the right to speak to any of them as the mother. So next she asks Precious how many years of hurt she is suppressing. And Precious says that she's suppressing everything since she was 7 months old. And then Iyanla sends Alicia to sit next to Precious. And when she's walking over to her, she is like discounting her feelings, you know, and saying that, you know, every time Precious calls her or she goes to visit, it's always, you know, my mommy's coming, my mommy is here, you know, like she's happy that Alicia's coming and that there's no problem going on. So she's totally in denial. So Precious apologizes for holding a grudge and being disrespectful, and she just always wanted Alicia's love. And then she says that she read the adoption papers and learned that Alicia was actually going to have an abortion, but the people at the hospital or wherever talked her into having the baby. And so that kind of made her change her perspective, because she realized that, you know, Alicia did love her enough to give birth to her. But then she kept reading the papers and found out that Alicia had up to a year to come back and get her, and that she never did. So that kind of like changed things all over again, because she had a year to get herself together and she still didn't want her after that year. So Iyanla says that sometimes the best way to take care of something is to let it go, and she realizes that a 5-year-old won't understand that, but it is true. So there she tells Alicia to turn to Shay. And Shay says that she is angry, disappointed, and she is let down by her mother. And she tried to look at things from Alicia's perspective, you know, but she always ends up getting hurt again or disappointed again by something that Alicia does. And that this has affected her relationship with her own daughters. So sometimes the pain is so deep that, you know, it bubbles to the surface and it scares us, according to Iyanla. And she says that as Black women, we can't afford to be weak. And I kind of disagree with that, because I think a lot of Black women's problems is that they always think they got to be strong and that we can't be vulnerable at some point. I think that we scare people away by always trying to be hard, always trying to be firm. And so maybe if somebody tells us that we don't have to be strong all the time, that it's okay for us to be weak, that a whole lot of us would be a whole lot better off. So she goes on to say that what happened to Alicia was wrong, and that the wrongness marinated into her children. And if Alicia doesn't come true to her kids, that they can't be saved. And so the show ends with Iyanla telling Alicia that she has to tell Shay the truth about her life and not to leave out any of the details. So this means that Alicia has to tell her daughters that she was molested as a child. So that's it for this episode. Looking forward to part 2. So guys, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, take care. Bye-bye.